If you're in my class, yesterday's video stopped with this sentence. After I tripped on the stairs, I fell on my face. And that is the sentence that you're going to write again in your notebooks, starting on your notes today. After I tripped on the stairs, I fell on my face. Pause this video if you need a little time to write that down. Yesterday, I taught you that when a sentence starts with a subordinate conjunction, which you all know them by heart by now, okay, such as after, there's my little subordinate conjunction. When you start with a subordinate conjunction, you will have a comma, because a subordinate conjunction begins a subordinate clause, a dependent clause. And if you have a dependent clause, it depends on another clause to finish the thought. And when it depends on something, it leans on it, and you need a comma between the two clauses. Okay? So after I tripped on the stairs, pause, I fell on my face. We also learned that that formula, write this again with me, is DC, dependent clause. It has a subject and a verb, but it can't stand alone, followed, comma, followed by an IC, an independent clause. I fell on my face. That is a clause. It has a subject and a verb, but it can stand alone, so it's called an independent clause. It's independent, period, equals a complex sentence. It's complex. DC, comma, IC, dependent clause, independent clause. Now, you can switch the order of the clauses and you will still have a complex sentence. But when you switch the order, you drop the comma. So if we wrote independent clause, dependent clause, okay, if we wrote it in this order, the sentence would read, and you're going to write it too, let's start with the independent clause. I fell on my face. I fell on my face. Finish the thought with the dependent clause. After I tripped on the stairs. After I tripped on the stairs. Period. Still a sentence, right? I fell on my face after I tripped on the stairs. But now, your subordinate conjunction is right here. It's in the middle. And you're starting with an independent clause. So you don't have a comma anymore. If you put down the comma, if you put a comma there, it makes the entire sentence wrong. If you put a comma here, it makes the entire sentence wrong. You do not have a comma when you have an independent clause followed by a dependent clause. But you do have a comma when you start with the dependent clause. So your lesson for the day is this. When you start your sentence with a subordinate conjunction, one of those 16 that I made you memorize in that song, when that word is the first word in your sentence, you will have a comma. Where does it go? Not after the first word, but after the entire clause, the dependent clause. And you can always check it by switching the order of the clauses. You'll still have a sentence that makes sense. For instance, look up here. After I tripped on the stairs, let's pretend, okay, you don't have to write this, but let's pretend that I was reading it and I said, oh, after I tripped, that's the end of my thought. Big, I'll put my comma there. But now if I switch the order and I put everything after the comma in the front of the sentence, does my sentence make sense? On the stairs, I fell on my face after I tripped. On the stairs, I fell on my face after I tripped. It doesn't even make sense, right? It's very convoluted. So we're going to finish our thought, the entire clause, start the new clause. That is where you put the comma. You can switch the order. It still makes sense, but you no longer have a comma. Okay? Remember that. Here's a mistake that I see a lot. I often see a comma put right here. Dink. Okay? Never put a comma right after your subordinate conjunction. Finish the entire clause. Your comma goes there. Got it? So, let's try this again. There's after, although. There's another one. Although, okay. Although what? Although you, my class you, although you talk way too much in class, although you talk way too much in class, okay? Although although you talk way too much in class, what? I can't end my thought there, right? Let's start a new clause. Comma. Always a comma. Start my new clause. I still like you. Who knows why, but I do. I still like you. Period. Okay? Although you talk way too much in class, I still like you. That is an independent clause right here. My hands are around it. I still like you. That could stand alone, right? The first part is your subordinate clause or your dependent clause. It can't stand alone. It depends, leans on something to make it complete. Now let's switch the order. I still like you, although you talk too much in class. Okay? Totally makes sense, right? If I switch the entire order. I still like you, although you talk too much in class. Things to remember when you do this exercise. Don't capitalize the although. It's not the first word in the sentence anymore. And so often I see you guys, when you redo these exercises, you do that. There's no reason to capitalize. It's in the middle of the sentence, okay? So, lowercase. And don't put a comma down, for the love of God. The entire lesson is when you switch the order, you drop the comma because the subordinate conjunction is now in the middle of your sentence, okay? You only have a comma when it's the first word. You are going to do this. That was like 1A, 1B, okay? So that would be 1. You're going to do this with 10 out of the 16 subordinate conjunctions from your subordinate conjunction song. You're going to do this exercise. Make up your own sentence. First, you pick a subordinate conjunction. Then you add a subject and a verb and the rest of your thought, right? And then you put a comma, and then you add an independent clause to make it complete. And then you switch the order and drop the comma. Do that 10 times. That's your assignment. Okay, quick note. If, you don't have to write this, but let's say, I need a short name, Bob, because I don't have much room. Bob. Although Bob talks way too much in class, I still like him. Okay? Let's say that's your sentence. Just a note when you're doing these on your own. Although Bob talks way too much in class, I still like him. When you rewrite that, make sure you push Bob to the front of the sentence. Make sure you say his name before you say the pronoun. Don't start off your sentence with, I still like him, although Bob talks too much in class. Make sure that you write, I still like who? Bob. Say his name first before you say the pronoun. Okay, so you would write, I still like Bob, although he talks way too much in class. Start with your proper noun, end with your pronoun. Just a side note, okay? I hope you understand the assignment. It's simple, 10 sentences written 2 ways. That's a total of 20 sentences. It needs to go in your notes. I know you have a test tomorrow. I know that this is being posted late. Therefore, if you're in 6th period, this you may turn in on Monday, okay? You can turn in your entire homework notebook on Monday, but it better look good if you're turning it in after the weekend, okay?